Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Berger and my project is on honesty in the workplace. And this goes hand in hand with dishonesty. I'll be discussing both and their effects. So a little bit about what I'll be going over today. I'll start by talking about different definitions and categorization of key concepts that will be continuously brought up and used throughout this presentation. It kind of just gives background context so everything makes sense. And then I'll move on to the importance of leadership, as this is a key factor in promoting honesty in the workplace. Next, I'll be talking about the implications of dishonesty, why lying is so prevalent in the workplace, and the big question, why do we lie? And then finally, how we can prevent it from happening in the first place. And then I'll end my presentation by leaving you with the most important points I've talked about today to kind of give you a takeaway and things that I want you to remember from my presentation. So getting into those definitions, first up, honesty. Now, I'm sure when most people think of honesty, they just think of being truthful, not lying. That is correct, but there are also a lot more layers to honesty. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines it as adherence to the facts, sincerity, but then also defines it as fairness and straightforwardness of conduct. Another definition, this time from the Cambridge Dictionary, defines it as telling the truth or able to be trusted and not likely to steal, cheat, or lie. Now, stealing, cheating, and being unfair don't necessarily involve lying. Being an honest person has to do with morals and ethics in addition to being truthful. The next word I want to talk about is trust. An article titled Workplace Trust and Employee Performance, written by Dr. Ibaranki and others, does a really good job of explaining the different categories of trust in the workplace. According to that article, there are two different categories of workplace trust. Organizational trust, which is employees' collective perceptions and expectations toward the organization as a whole. While interpersonal trust, which is what we're going to focus on the most today, is employees' trust in superiors, peers, or subordinates. This can further be broken down into lateral trust and vertical trust. Lateral trust deals with the relationships between employees on the same authority level, while vertical trust deals with relationships between employees and managers or team leaders. And we'll get into more of the vertical trust when we talk about leadership. Okay, now to dive into the importance of leadership. An article written by Hashem and others titled Ethical Leadership Promoting Integrity in the Workplace states that good leadership should be ethical leadership that involves conducting oneself with honesty, trustworthiness, and values-based decision-making, as well as actively managing ethics by communicating clear ethical standards, rewarding integrity, and sanctioning misconduct. Now, to add on to that, studies documented by Dixon in his article, Conceptualizing Leadership Across Cultures, have shown that this type of ethical leadership is linked to positive organizational outcomes. Employees are showing signs of greater job satisfaction, commitment to their work, motivation, and an overall trust in leadership. This honest, ethical leadership really does go a long way in organizational outcomes, since a stronger commitment and motivation usually result in more efficient and effective work from employees. It also benefits the employees directly. As they are more satisfied and fulfilled in the work that they are doing, there is likely to be a positive effect on their mental health as well. Next, there's a Harvard Business Review that evaluated the most important leadership competencies. Now, they took 195 global leaders and asked them to rate 74 qualities in leaders by the most important. And the results showed high ethical and moral standards being the most important quality, with 67% of those global leaders placing it as the most important. Some of the reasonings they gave for their answers were that leaders with high ethical standards, now this includes honesty, convey a commitment to fairness, and this creates a feeling of safety. No one feels the need to lie or cheat their way to the top in a safe work environment. And this is honestly one of the most important things that helps promote honesty. And even if just one person, when they have that leadership role, can create a sort of unspoken rule, something along the lines of, this is how things are going to work. I set clear, fair, and honest ways of going about certain things. I'm going to follow that, and I expect you to follow that as well. All right, moving on to implications. So let's say those standards don't get followed for whatever reason. That could be a very stubborn employee who wants to do things their way or the highway and just wants an edge on everyone else or feels like they need that edge to succeed. Or it could be that leadership just isn't setting those standards for honesty, and they might just turn a blind eye, and employees get used to being able to get away with lying and deception in the workplace. There are many negative implications when honesty is not present in the workplace. First off, it can damage relationships with fellow employees. This goes back to that horizontal trust mentioned earlier between employees and employees on the same authority level. And trust is very important and something that is valued by many in personal lives and in workplace environments. It is something that I have to have when developing close relationships with anyone, and I think a lot of people will agree with me. Now, if a coworker lies or deceives people enough, then eventually everyone will start to look at them as dishonest and not trustworthy. They then won't want to build a relationship with them. And relationships between employees can make work more satisfying, and without those, employees may lose the motivation or excitement they originally had for their work. This can also cause issues when collaboration is necessary for a company project. Those relationships make teamwork a lot easier, and if two employees don't have a good relationship, arguments might be more likely to break out. And then relationships can also be ruined between manager and employee. This is that vertical trust between an employee and someone on a higher authority level. Say an employee lies about calling out sick very often. Usually a manager will be able to pick up on that. And if a manager can't trust their employee to show up, then that employee might just lose their job. Now, that is a mild example of workplace dishonesty. However, more serious issues are known as workplace crime. Dr. Muthuswamy, in her article, Factors Affecting Workplace Crime, defined it as any harmful act committed by a person or group during legitimate occupation. An example of this could be an employee negotiating with another company's employee or even just a customer, and they're trying to sell a product. Now, this product has a defect that isn't obvious enough for the buyer to notice, and if the employee lies and says it is in pristine condition without any faults or defects, then this could be seen as workplace crime. This then has larger impacts on the company itself. It only takes one employee to tarnish a company's reputation. Dr. Muthuswamy mentioned in a study they conducted, dissatisfied employees are likely to participate in negative workplace behaviors, potentially workplace crime. She states that job satisfaction motivates employees to exhibit positive behaviors and avoid deviant and criminal conduct. As we talked about previously, ethical leadership is shown to increase employee job satisfaction. Van Zandt, writer of Why Lies Don't Pay in Negotiations and the Workplace, states that further, managers' failure to encourage an ethical climate can lead employees to leave the company due to a mismatch between their values and the unethical behavior they believe corporate leadership condones. Now, when companies let their employees become unsatisfied with their work, they risk losing employees altogether. And if this persists, they won't have enough labor to run their company smoothly. Now the big question, why do we lie? We all know lying is wrong. As the Harvard Business Review mentions, Most of us were taught this at a very young age. So why do we do it? Van Zandt states, lying is common in various professional contexts and typically goes undetected. Because it is so common, people tend to think, well, everyone does it, why shouldn't I? And since it usually goes undetected, employees tend not to think about the negative implications it can have, because they just assume they probably won't get caught. Since lying is so common and people assume others are lying as well, people tend to think they are just leveling the playing field. This is very common when it comes to exaggerating and lying on a resume. They tell themselves, well, everyone does it. This may be harmless in certain scenarios, but that employee can run into issues down the line if they are supposed to have experience with a certain area of expertise, but they end up doing it wrong or just not knowing how to do it at all. The thought that everyone is lying can also add stress and put employees under pressure. As Jenkins states in its article, Exploring Organizational Deception, Organizational Context, Social Relations, and Types of Lying. Lying may be a way of coping with the pressures, tensions, and contradictions within the workplace, as evident in the studies of defensive lying. Hence, lying can emerge in some settings as a survival strategy, as the only way to cope with the demands placed upon employees by either managers or customers. That's why it's so important for leaders and managers to create a safe work environment. However, some lies only have short-term benefits. For example, Van Zandt states, while liars occasionally felt happy due to the thrill of getting away with an economically beneficial lie, undetected lies were consistently accompanied by more guilt than happiness. So how can this be prevented? Well, first, creating a safe work environment is key. This has to do with management and company culture. And a safe work environment allows employees to trust management and not have to lie or deceive people to feel heard. And this helps to get rid of that survival strategy I was just talking about. Next, lead by example. Leading by example, again, has to do with the manager or team leader. If they are acting ethically and are perceived as honest, then the employees are likely to match their standards. Then encouraging honesty is also very important. If honesty is encouraged and praised, then employees are more likely to act honestly. If they are rewarded in some way, even if it's just respect. It's also important to discourage dishonesty and lies. There needs to be specific guidelines and expectations in place, and if they aren't followed, there needs to be consequences ready. If there aren't consequences, then those employees think they're getting away with it and are more likely to do it in the future. So an idea to make sure employees are informed of the expectations is to cover honesty at the employee or company meetings once a month, or however often the company does them. So, before I leave you, there are a few key concepts that are important for you to remember from this presentation. Dishonesty comes in many forms. Lies, deception, unfair treatment, stealing, cheating, all of which are bad. And it's important to be aware of your own behavior as well as other employees or managers. Identifying these forms of dishonesty can help you see it and correct it in the workplace, if present in yourself or leadership. And then a good work environment sets the tone for employee behavior. And then trust is key to any work relationship. Building good relationships is important because networking is so big, and in order to have strong relationships, trust is necessary. Also, don't forget, it's shown that employees with good relationships with coworkers have higher job satisfaction. And then strong ethics is highly valued in leaders and management, and that's important to remember if you ever find yourself in a leadership position. Lastly, actions have consequences. Don't think since everyone lies, you can get away with it. Most likely, one of these times it will come back to hurt you somehow. And then these are my citations.